The Broncos are cutting KJ Hamler after the wide receiver reveals a heart condition, pericarditis. We got an update on Bronny James, LeBron James' son, 50-50, whether or not he returns to classes, and he may never play ball again. We got another shocking story. I believe it's a tennis player struggling to breathe and collapsing. More and more of these stories coming out. And all I can ask is the question of when will the corporate press and the mainstream address what seems to be a major spike in these stories about heart conditions, breathing conditions, athletes collapsing on the court or the field. Now, of course, my friends, as per usual, make sure you consult a doctor you trust, a doctor who can tell you what's right for you. I recently had a medical issue in my hip, as most of you know, and it looked like I might need surgery to repair some damage. I am fortunate in that I found a good doctor at the Cellular Performance Institute, and they treated me up pretty well and seems to have resolved the majority of the issue. I'm still in the healing process, but if you've watched any of I posted a skate video on Instagram, seems to be going pretty well. Most of the pain is gone, and I'm relieved that I avoided surgery. But this is the issue. A few of the experts I talk to, they tell me, oh, this seems to be the problem. You're going to have to go do this treatment and see this person. So what did I do? Shopped around, got some advice, talked to another doctor, said, we're going to take a look at this and we're going to treat you in this way. I know. Everyone's already saying, Tim, you went to Tijuana and you had a doctor. Fair point. I had a doctor that I found that I trusted. This is a totally different circumstance. In this regard, I'm just saying in general, I can't give you medical advice. You've got to find a trusted medical professional, somebody who knows about particular issues relating to all this, and I really do hope you do. Now, on to the politics. Following these stories, of course, it's reigniting the debate over vaccines and ivermectin and other things like this, for which, my only opinion is I don't think anyone knows. I don't think anyone knows for sure. Of course, there are people suspect certain things. Of course, people online are claiming the vaccines are causing this. But my immediate rebuttal is COVID could be causing these heart conditions. And if your concern is that there was a lab leak or gain of function research, I don't understand why that's not a plausible scenario. But all I can really say is, look, I don't know. I want to read this for you and say one thing that I do think is important. What I think is most important is we're getting tons of these stories. There are a lot of reasons why that may be, but at a certain point, it needs to be addressed, period. Here's the latest from Fox News. They say the Denver Broncos are set to release wide receiver KJ Hamler with a non-football illness designation after he revealed Monday that he's been diagnosed with a heart condition. Hamler revealed in an Instagram post he was diagnosed with pericarditis after feeling some chest pains while working out on the break before camp started. He vowed to get back onto the field at some point during the course of the 2023 season. Quote, I will be back on the field better and stronger than ever. As soon as possible this season, Hamler wrote on social media, I feel great physically, and this is very frustrating for me to deal with. I know most of you have heard or know of my story in these past few years, what I've been going through on and off the field. I'll get past this just like everything else on this journey. I will continue to elevate. I forever stand on business. Denver selected Hamler in the second round of the 2020 draft out of Penn State. He suffered a torn ACL in 2021, missed a portion of 2022 with a hamstring injury. Then he suffered a torn pectoral muscle. Damn. I feel bad for this guy, dude. I mean, you work so hard, you train, and this guy, he gets drafted, and then he gets roughed up pretty bad. Torn ACL, that's no joke, man. Hamstring injury, a torn pectoral muscle, and now pericarditis. Bro, I hope this guy finds peace, happiness, and success. I hope he recovers. This just sounds so brutal. They also appeared to lose wide receiver Tim Patrick for a second straight season. Patrick was carted off the field with a left Achilles tendon injury, suffering an ACL injury in the camp last year. Now, those things are fairly common. I mean, ACL injuries, that could be career-ending for a lot of people. We'll see. But this is the big news coming out this morning, which is a lot of people speaking once again about what is causing the myocarditis and the pericarditis. And I think it's about time we have a serious, legitimate conversation about this. Now, I know, most of you have been trying to do just that, and YouTube censors those conversations. I think the big challenge is people making definitive claims when I think definitive claims are the worst thing. I shouldn't say the worst thing, but I think they're not good. I don't know exactly what's going on or what's causing it, and there's no way I can. In solving the problem, we should say there are a few things to consider. One, COVID itself, we know, causes myocarditis, pericarditis. It was causing lung issues, was causing people to collapse. That's an important discussion. There's also the fact that we did a massive, what are we at, like 13 billion dose vaccine program, and there are questions right there. Could it be something as simple as you give out 12 billion doses of a vaccine, you're going to see a few thousand cases of people with side effects because medication has side effects? Perhaps. I think it's extremely plausible, and I'd argue probably more plausible that COVID causes all of this stuff. And it just makes makes the most sense. But again, not a doctor. Don't know. Are we going to get the research out of all of this stuff? Man, I don't know. But take a look at this. One thing I could say for sure is that there is something going on, and we can all see it. LeBron James and his family are 50-50 on Bronny starting classes at USC later this month as the 18-year-old recovers from his cardiac arrest, and any basketball decision is a conversation for the future. All right. And I know I've discussed this before, but let's break it down. Conspiracy theory time. Obviously, you have tons of people online saying the vaccine caused this. I don't know that's true, and I don't think they know that's true. I think the reason they do is because they're seeing a widespread, they're seeing many stories about people collapsing on the field, young people suffering heart attacks. Then they're seeing the corporate press say climate change is causing us. Distrust, point one. Mass vaccination program, point two. People then draw conclusions. Many of these athletes were forced to get vaccinated to play, therefore. But I don't think jumping to the conclusion is the appropriate way to handle this. Of course, you're seeing a lot of correlation between people who have suffered myocarditis, pericarditis, cardiac arrest, etc., and those who got vaccinated. They basically gave everyone the vaccine. I think something like 70% of people got it. So the data pool is tainted in that regard. You can't just say that proves it. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying consider this. I'll tell you what I think. I think there's a strong possibility. Let's take the lightest approach here. Anthony Fauci, according to one claim, there were emails where apparently Fauci was suspicious of the Wuhan lab, saying they may be doing gain of function research. The question is, this was Rand Paul's criminal referral. Did Fauci intentionally fund gain of function research, sending money to EcoHealth Alliance, which then transferred funds to the Wuhan lab, which then performed gain of function research, which then essentially created COVID? Though that's a lot of speculation. But there's a trail of breadcrumbs which leads people to believe that's likely the case, including the U.S. government believes that the Wuhan lab was performing gain of function research, which is the most likely outcome for COVID. The question is, did Fauci intentionally fund it? Intentionally or not, he did. I should say the institution he was in charge of, the NIAID, at the NIH, they were funding this. Simply put, these stories could be emerging because COVID itself, with its novel components, things that people were shocked by, is causing this damage. I mean, I think it really is that simple. And then your conspiracy theory would be Anthony Fauci funded gain of function research. It was extremely dangerous and reckless. A virus was produced in a lab, which ultimately ended up causing very serious side effects like myocarditis, pericarditis, cardiac arrest, etc. Cardiac arrest, of course, coming from myocarditis or pericarditis. But again, it's all just speculation, man. I really don't know. I want to pull up some tweets for you. So we know about LeBron James and about his son. We're now learning about KJ Hamler. We've got this right here. This is Yosuke Watanuke. He collapsed. Check this out. He was forced to retire. Apparently he was having trouble breathing. Now, hold on. You see, this is another thing. People immediately will jump on this one, and they're going to say, why is this happening? This is a breathing issue. We have no idea. COVID caused breathing issues, right? I think that's a fair point. Again, I'm not trying to tell you to believe one thing or another. I'm just trying to say we need to open up this conversation to figure out, is this anomalous? Is this something serious? Because if something is going on that's causing people to suffer these ailments, then we need to stop it. And there's got to be a legitimate effort to do so. Let's see what we got here. Damar Hamlin is a little scared as the Buffalo Bills safety participates in first padded practice since cardiac arrest. Yo, LeBron James' 18-year-old son had a heart attack. Damar Hamlin, 25, had I'm sorry, I shouldn't say heart attack. They're different. Heart attack, and I believe a heart attack is myocardial infarction. And that's where, like, the heart doesn't get enough oxygen, something gets cut off, and then part of it dies or something like that. Whereas cardiac arrest is quite literally heart stopped. What could cause the heart to just abruptly stop? Man, I don't know the answers for you. But let's do this. I'm going to argue with some people on the internet. And I think I'll start with, what do we have here? All right, I think we have, we'll start with this tweet from Brett Weinstein. And we'll talk about medical treatment and what's going on. We have this tweet from Alex Berenson. Alex Berenson has been heavily critical of COVID vaccines. He said, I have read the RCTs. They're well constructed and universally show ivermectin is useless. Further, ivermectin is a great antiparasitic, but has no plausible mechanism of action against COVID. Thus, clinical results in theory align. The end. I got to be honest. I lean towards agreeing with Alex Berenson on this issue. Brett Weinstein said, faith that ivermectin doesn't work is bizarre in 2023. The big RCTs were designed to fail. If you read and understood them, you know it. And means, motive, and opportunity for the sabotage are all clear. We discussed the motive, the vaccine EUAs on Dark Horse back in May of 21. Alex Berenson responded, why were they designed to fail? Why did the researchers running the studies hope they would fail? And Brett says, I don't understand your confusion, Alex. The mRNA vaccine platform is incredibly lucrative. It is also inherently unsafe. Emergency use authorization requires there to be no safe and approved alternative, so ivermectin had to fail. Okay, well, I'll just simply respond to that by saying Brett Weinstein is an evolutionary biologist. I think he's a smart fella. I don't believe he's a medical doctor. All I can really tell you is, as I always do, please do not take medical advice from podcasts or podcasters and talk to your personal medical professional. I had a guy last night ask me for financial advice on the Members Only show. He's like, what should we do to store value? I was like, nope. You know what the simple answer is? I get a lot of people being like, Tim's trying not to run afoul of the rules on YouTube. Fair point to a certain degree. I don't want to get sued by telling people to engage in financial or medical practices. It's that simple. I'm not going to pretend to know. I don't know. Well, let's entertain this and I'll tell you what I think. So, he says ivermectin is incredibly lucrative. Emergency use authorization requires there to be no safe and approved alternative, so ivermectin had to fail. This makes no sense. Sorry, man. This is the one that really grinds my gears. It just makes no sense. I don't know where this argument came from, and I don't get why not a single person pushing it has stopped to even think about the logic here. Let's stop. Go from the beginning. The vaccine got an emergency use authorization. The argument is if there was an alternative treatment, they couldn't have it. Okay, but there was an alternative treatment. There were several. Remdesivir was one, and so were monoclonal antibodies. Many people say, but those were very expensive. That doesn't change anything. The vaccine was also expensive, but it was subsidized by government. Government could have subsidized monoclonal antibodies. Oh, wait, they did in many circumstances. Don't get me wrong. I think Maryland did some weird racist thing where it was like white people were at the back of the line to get it. And there were also, I don't know if there was subsidy for remdesivir, but there were 3 EUA treatments. They could have given ivermectin an emergency use authorization that would not have taken away the EUA from any other treatment. I don't get this argument. Now, I believe it was Alex Stein who says, yes, but ivermectin is cheap. Those other treatments are expensive. Okay. They could have required that ivermectin only be administered after the vaccine or after monoclonal antibody in conjunction with. They could have said the approved treatment requires both. They could have done this. And the fact that ivermectin never received EUA didn't matter. Because ivermectin is already FDA approved for treating parasites, meaning if a doctor wanted to prescribe it, they could. You did not need an EUA. It's the craziest thing ever. Now, if you go to a doctor, I'll tell you this. I went to a doctor. The doctor gave me a prescription. I got monoclonal antibodies. It was approved by the FDA. I don't get it. I got it. It helped me. The doctor then wanted me to follow up with a couple other things, including, I think it was steroids and ivermectin. And I said, I don't think I need it. The doctor said, just do what I recommend. And I was like, okay, fine, sure, whatever. So hold on. The doctor prescribed to me the treatment plan. And this one, don't get me wrong, expensive. But the treatment plan, not a prevention plan, which was what the vaccine was supposed to be. This is what they were marketing as. Vaccine was preventative. Treatment, something different, was monoclonal antibodies followed by ivermectin. That's what my doctor prescribed. I'm not saying it worked. I don't know. The monoclonal antibodies seem to have worked. Alex Berenson responded. This is a common fantasy from ivermectin fans about the EUA issue, not potential mRNA risks. Legally, U.S. FDA had flexibility once an emergency is declared. Once Pfizer put out its 95% RCT results in 2020, those jabs were getting to the market, period. The upshot is that ivermectin's presence or absence made no difference to the mRNAs. Pfizer, Moderna, US FDA couldn't have cared less. I agree. I really don't understand the ivermectin argument. I'll give you another one. I'm going to elaborate on what I was saying. The issue with EUA for the vaccine is that the vaccine was new. These different vaccines were new. I believe that like J&J was taken off the market. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. It's been a while. I think AstraZeneca was never allowed in the U.S. And there are side effect concerns with the other ones, but that's all on the CDC website. You can check that out and again, talk to a doctor. The issue with those is that in order to receive them, they have to be FDA approved or emergency authorized, meaning there's no other way to get them. Doctors can't prescribe them. They are not approved. So they got EUA. Thus, vaccines were allowed to be given out. Monoclonal antibodies were allowed to be given out. You may be saying, but what about ivermectin, Tim? Why didn't they prescribe or give that an EUA or approval? Because, as I mentioned, ivermectin is already FDA approved for treating parasites, river blindness, and worms, I guess, or whatever. And if a doctor wanted to prescribe it, they could. Now, don't get me wrong. There were a lot of doctors that refused. But now we're talking more so about a media narrative than anything else. You had people coming out. You have Alex Berenson coming out saying they don't think it does anything. I got to be completely honest. I'm one of those people as well. I think the ivermectin thing was completely overhyped. When Brett Weinstein says that emergency use authorization requires there to be no safe or approved alternative, so ivermectin had to fail, that's a fair point in terms of they couldn't say it did anything, I suppose, because it already was on available for prescription. But I don't think that answers as to why there were multiple EUAs for things like monoclonal antibodies, et cetera, et cetera. You get my point. My point is, they could have just said, ivermectin seems to have limited use case. This is the weird thing about this argument, in my opinion, that it takes this approach that humans, the law is a rigid, logical system with no flexibility at all. And that's the point that Alex Berenson is making. They have absolute flexibility once an emergency is declared. They could have said, we have some studies that are promising, but we think we need, this, that, or otherwise. We need there to be vaccine approval because vaccine and ivermectin are totally different. One is preventative, one may be treatment. They could have said something to that effect, but that's not what happened. I think the reality is when I started looking at all the data, I heard a lot of arguments. I saw a lot of data and I said, I don't understand what the basis is for this. If the argument from Brett Weinstein is the studies failed for because people wanted to make money, I can say, okay, maybe you're right. But I can only say this. Then there's no studies saying otherwise. Simply put, you can't argue it did work if there are no studies. You can argue the studies were sabotaged. I hear you, I guess. But that still makes no argument as to why you think that treatment did work. I don't know, everybody tells me I'm wrong and all that stuff. All I can tell you is this. People are suffering issues right now. I'd like to know what's causing it. How do we get those trials? How do we test for this? We need to start looking at data compared to people who got COVID and people who didn't get COVID, people who got vaccine and never got COVID, people who got COVID and never got the vaccine. That's when we can start breaking this down and get to the root of what is happening around us. And that's what matters. Because if star athletes keep collapsing on the fields and you don't address it, things are going to get crazy. Now, I will end this by saying, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I can only ask logical questions based on what these prominent personalities are saying as to why I disagree and why I'd like more answers. I don't trust Fauci. I think he lied under oath. I don't trust what's coming out of the U.S. government. I don't trust it. I found a doctor I trusted. They seem to have helped me. Monoclonal antibodies helped me get over it, like seriously within a matter of hours. And that was EUA approved. I can't even say they gave me ivermectin. I don't know if they did anything. I did not see it. I really didn't. But again, to stress, the most important thing here is not whether you and I are debating or anyone is debating vaccines, efficacy and ivermectin and monoclonals. It's a question about what is causing pericarditis, myocarditis, people collapsing on the field, cardiac arrest, because it seems that we're seeing more of it than ever. Perhaps the issue is that the media is reporting it more than ever. That could be a reality. But I went on Google and I did a time search where I said before December of 2019, cardiac arrest, myocarditis. I looked at this, limited stories, once every few months. Now it seems like we're getting stories like this and died suddenly stories quite a bit. I'd like to know what's causing it definitively. Some would argue vaccines or whatever. I don't know about that. Some would argue COVID. Honestly, that seems very plausible to me. And again, I'll stress, you think this was made in a lab as a bioweapon or whoever or whatever else? I don't know. I was talking to Roseanne and she said, I think, yeah, maybe that. And I'm like, right, like, look, COVID could be doing it. I'll just put it this way. We need to have a conversation about it. This should be a big, major trending topic of conversation. Resources should be going into this because if it is COVID, I think we should know about it. And what if it is? And we do nothing. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I see this dude getting cut from the Broncos, and I'm just like, damn, man, that's not normal, is it? So what is it? I don't know. I don't. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.